Hi everyone, I'm Paras Chopra and welcome to Bold Conjectures. Today I'm with Visakan Veerasamy, who is the internet's child. I call him that because he jokes that the internet is his mum. In 2018, he quit his job in software marketing to write full time. He writes and tweets extensively on a variety of topics, many of which converge on a few recurring themes around friendships, love, ambition, and nerdiness. I've interacted with Visa, as he's fondly called before on Twitter. But this time I reached out to him for a conversation because when I tweeted, who two people should talk to each other and they enjoy being friends, the person responded that it's likely that I and Visa will enjoy talking to each other. And this prospect of today's conversation gave me a really good reason to read his book, which is called his Friendly Ambitious Nerd, his essays and his Twitter threads. And I think I agree, after reading what he's written, Visa will be a lot of fun and I'm quite looking forward to it. So I'm hoping this conversation will be less like a traditional podcast, but more like two people who are introduced by mutual friend chatting for the first time. So I hope that sounds great, Visa.
It does.
Great. Cool. So, I have lots of clippings and phrases from your book, and we can go in a number of directions. But I want to just start with the title of your book, Friendly Ambitious Nerd. Not just in the book, but I think on your Twitter and everywhere else, that's like a main recurring theme in your thought. So why these three terms? How do you see them? And basically, why did you pick these up?
Right. So I have I have a lot of stuff. Like I've written a lot of stuff in a lot of domains, and I always knew that I wanted to. I don't know if I was always completely certain that I would want to be a professional author or like write for a living, but I knew that I would always be writing and I would have a body of work that would be growing. And so I have a lot of blog posts, I have a lot of tweets. I used to be active on Quora. I just write as much as I can everywhere as much as possible. And when I left my job, so I had free time to do more writing. The thing that was a priority for me was, okay, I should use this free time that I have to try and come up with something that encapsulates me, right? And so I because of my marketing background, I'm like trying to think about, okay, what's the right way to present myself? What's the right thing that I can put out into the world that when people see, they get a good sense of me and what my interests are. But I also don't want to be pigeonholed into something that's like very narrow. So for example, a book that I could write, that I am writing, is like about dealing with ADHD. And I'm confident that it would sell more, it would sell faster, I would make more money, but I would get pigeonholed as the ADHD guy, as if that's my first book, and I don't really want that. So I was reflecting on, what should my first book be, and it can't be a memoir, because if nobody knows who you are yet, then nobody cares about your memoir yet. You have to write a bunch of other successful things first before you write a memoir. I mean, you can write it first, but you shouldn't sell your memoir as your first book. So I just kind of kept reflecting, what are my threads? What are my ideas? What are the blog posts? What resonates with people? And I had a bunch of conversations with people, and I had a bunch of, I'll go around asking my friends, like, what is it that you like about me? Why do you follow me on Twitter? What do you like? And people recurringly say things around those three terms. They're like, oh, you're very friendly. You're always very encouraging. You do all these very elaborate kind of investigations. Like I'll go on Wikipedia and click around and post screenshots and share. I mean, I'm sure lots of people do that, but I do it intensely. And so I just kind of collected all the feedback that I could, and I experimented with a bunch of phrases, and I found that Friendly Ambitious Nerd kind of captures a mindset and a way of being that I think is true to who I am. It's also an aspirational idea to some degree. So like I have those qualities, and I would like more of those qualities, and I would like to associate with people who have those qualities. And so it's like once I had those ideas, it's not like all three words kind of jumped out at me instantly, but like as I was kind of looking at my notes and okay, people keep saying I'm friendly, and I experimented with a bunch. I think at some point I wanted to use more words, but then it's like became too long. So it's like it just felt like the rule of three felt correct. And
Yeah.
so eventually it settled on Friendly Ambitious Nerd.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this because it's sort of like a label without a label, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I find it hard for people like you, and also to a certain degree me, who are interested in so many things. How do you even go about introducing someone? What do you
Yeah.
write on bio? Because
Yeah.
traditionally people say I'm an engineer, I'm a
Yeah.
marketer, I'm a writer,
Yeah.
but I just feel, those labels become so limiting. Then
Yeah.
if you start believing in them too much, I think it just reflects back and pigeonholes your own identity.
Yeah.
So, in fact, when I was reading your book, I realized that probably everyone should write their own
Yes.
book. I
I
think it's
agree.
such like reading your book felt like knowing you as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel that it would have been so wonderful if most of the people had written that 100-page book with their most intimate thoughts, reflections. It's a beautiful
Right.
way to get to know someone.
Oh, thank you. I know that Michel Montaigne from like the 1500s, he said that as well. He said that he wants to get to know interesting people in the world, and that the fastest way he can do that is to basically write his essays, which he compiled into books. That way, if someone finds his book and they read it, then he has like a head start because they get to know all these things about him. And then I'm like, yeah, that's still true today, and it's even more true because now you can just publish material online even if you're not wealthy or famous or whatever. And yeah, the other thing that you mentioned that I'd love to get into is kind of so with labels, right? So I think part of the challenge of language is that you can use familiar language that everyone understands, but the problem with that is that it's very loaded, and there's all these assumptions that come along with it. And then all the way at the other end of the spectrum, you can invent new words entirely that have whatever connotations you want to attach to it. But if it's completely foreign and new, then like nobody understands what you're saying and they can't understand you. So like all the magic is in the middle where you try and use phrases that are familiar enough, but maybe you combine them in some context that's not, kind of familiar yet. And then there's this, and then it goes in cycles, right? So like there was a time where growth hacking was a phrase that people would
Yeah.
use to describe what they were doing. And initially it was, this exciting idea with all these, it's just a new phrase. And so people who come to that phrase bring their own ideas with it. And then people see, oh, that seems so successful. They start imitating it. And then that becomes like this burdensome new label. Then people discard that and they start all over again. And just, I like to observe
Yeah.
and understand these things.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this. I mean, it's a mundane observation in hindsight, but sort of like it struck me like an epiphany that sort of all words are made up. So when I
Yes.
realize even say things like operating system that we take so much for granted,
Yes.
when it was proposed for the first time, it would have been, what the hell does it mean?
Yeah.
And now it's as mundane as anything else can be. So
Yeah.
I think what you're trying to do when you said something in the middle, it's really pushing the boundary of boring a little bit, because
Yeah.
these labels tend to become overused, they tend to become boring. But when you
Yeah.
mix unexpected things together like you've done,
Yeah.
nobody considers friendly ambitious nerd as a phrase together.
Yeah.
But you putting them together just suddenly makes it much more exciting.
And the funny thing is, if you really, really succeed very well at coining some new phrases, eventually people will be like, "Oh, but that's obvious," because then you've succeeded, because it's like you've introduced a new idea to the lexicon, right? And yeah, that is my, I have a tweet from like 2017 or something where I say that my goal in life is to be like a word artist / magician, where it's there's just this, like, human language is such a mass multiplayer collaborative thing, and the meaning of words can drift and shift. And George Orwell had this great essay in the 1940s. I think he wrote it in 1946, and he was writing, it's like around World War II was happening, and his concerns were political. He's like, oh, people are deliberately using language in a way to obscure ideas. So like, instead of saying people were killed, you'd be like, the threats were neutralized or whatever. You try and use language to influence the way people think and the way people perceive things. And so ever since I was a child, like reading books, it just seemed obvious to me that words are incredibly powerful, and it's super democratic. Anybody can play with words, right? Anybody can sit down and write something. And back then I thought the decision trade-off I had to make was, do I want to be a writer or do I want to be like a filmmaker, maybe? Because back then, if you wanted to make a film, you had this much, and now you can make films with your phone. Again, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. I mean, on the topic of words again, uh, I think it is sort of like taking a little bit of risk. I mean, whenever I'm writing something, I'm always on the edge, whether to use plain vanilla boring language that gets the point across, what is, unemotional, dry, but
Mhm.
whether to take a little bit of risk and really try to convey
Mm.
an emotion that just cannot be captured by the usual phrases or words and all that. So does that come to your mind when you're writing and drafting, whether you're going whether you're too boring or too radical?
That's a good question. I would say that so usually if I'm already writing, it's because there's something that I want to express or something I want to explore. For me, I think writing is like a tool of exploration. I might not know what I think about something until I start writing out, and then I can see how I feel. And I think while I am writing, I try to go fast. I try to not overthink things. I found that like ruminating for too long while you're writing a sentence and trying to figure out what you mean by that sentence, it can kind of, it's like watching your feet when you walk and you stumble over yourself because you kind of overly in your head. But so I try to write as fast as I can, as much volume as I can, and so that gives me whatever body of work that I can look at. And then when I look at it, then there's the editing mode, right? If I'm going to share stuff with people. But also if with my tweets, for example, and actually even my book, Friendly Ambitious Nerd, it's a version 1 of an ebook. I want to update it. And I already see so much of it that I feel could be stronger. It could be more empathic, right? Like kind of intense. And yeah, so I guess my end goal is always try to convey maximum signal with minimal noise. So and that's a moving target, right? Because language is dynamic. So it's not like you can ever, something that was very dynamic and exciting like a few decades ago. You read it now and it feels kind of tedious and stale. And so there needs to be constant renewal, you need to be up to date with and it's not just the words, but also just the way people are talking. What else is on people's minds? What can you reference? Like if you read Shakespeare, a lot of why Shakespeare doesn't excite teenagers is because at the time he was referencing all sorts of current affairs that were happening back then. So people will be like, oh, he's talking about the Queen, or he's talking about something else. And yeah, I try to keep my writing as interesting and exciting as I can, but it has to be honest. It has to be as true as I can make it. And I find that just within those constraints, it has to be true as I can make it. And it's always after you post it, you'll be like, oh, but there are caveats and there are contexts in which that doesn't apply and blah, 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 which is part of the process, right? You share it with other people, and then somebody criticizes you in a way like, oh, I did not see that at all, which is great. That's how you learn, but it can be painful. But yeah, so I try to keep things as sharp as possible, in a way, as exciting, as compelling, as truthful. And at the same time, you can't spend way too long on it, because then if you spend years and years writing something and you don't get any feedback from other people, you might end up kind of making a white elephant, right? So you have to ship stuff regularly and get feedback from people. And so, and all of these challenges, it's like multiple dimensions of challenge, right? Trying to make the language accessible, but interesting. It's exciting to me. So it's like, I can spend my life doing this, basically.
And who's the audience? Are you writing it for yourself, or specific kind of person, or whoever finds?
My primary audience at this point in time, I would say I'm trying to find very smart, kind, talented people like myself or different than myself, like who can interface with me, but I am not currently talking to. So I think of my writing as like, it's like sending flares into the night, right? Trying to attract the right sort of attention. So when I was working in marketing, at my previous company, we sold referral marketing software, so e-commerce software. So, you want to sell more of that, which means you have to sell to business owners, which means you have to write content that appeals to business owners. And, the metrics you look at day to day are like, oh, you want more traffic to the site, and you want to convert traffic from the site to the blog, from the blog to the site, and click through, sign-ups, blah, blah, blah. And, where am I going with this? I think it can be, I think that I see,
you're just sending
people
flares in the sky to attract people.
Yeah, I think the thing that people struggle with is that it's always tempting to seek a larger audience. like whether in marketing or in selling books or in tweeting or whatever, you will find that some of your tweets or some of your blog posts or some of your work, if once you're good enough, right? So if you're horrible, you just don't get any success whatsoever. But so let's say you start out really, really bad, you practice, you get better, and now you get some audience, right? You do some tweets and you get feedback, and that feedback feels good because previously you had no feedback, and so it's nice to get some feedback. And here some people get kind of get drunk on their on the excitement, right? And they're like, ooh, I had 100 followers yesterday and now I have 1,000 followers, and so I should do more of that, which is very dangerous. It's very it's like a devil's bargain. Like the devil will tempt you with, if you post more outrage, if you post more, if you make grand promises, like I'm going to help you achieve impossible outcome, then you'll get a huge audience. But then the audience will be, not very thoughtful. They will be flighty. They will have expectations and demands, and they will not be fair to you. They will not be kind to you, right? So I try to visualize kind of my ideal network of peers that I want in my life, right? One way I think about it is I think about my 80th birthday. Let's say I'm an old man now, or maybe 90th, 100th birthday. I'm an old man now. I've lived a good and successful life by my own definition. I'm surrounded by people, from all walks of life, all over the world, people I respect and admire a lot. And then I reverse engineer that. Like, how did I meet these people, right? Like, what did I write that appealed to these particular people? And so the challenge there is to avoid, very often, the things that I want to talk about, I actually have to be quite careful to avoid stoking outrage, for example. So like some of the things I'm passionate about are things like how can men, right, have a nourishing model of masculinity where you feel strong and support each other in this age where, it's like our traditional gender norms feel a bit outdated. Like I want to talk about these things, but and it's so easy to be like, oh, what's wrong with women and men these days is like, if you start with that, you'll get a ton of attention, but it'll be noise, people will be angry, it'll be chaotic. And then it's very difficult to have a thoughtful conversation there. So it's like, I'm trying to create spaces where I feel we can have thoughtful conversations. But also I do have some ambitions for wanting to reach a bigger and bigger audience over time, but carefully and slowly, so that the people who show up, they understand the goal, they understand what we're trying to do with the culture. And so that then when you 10x that again one more time, the new people who come in, they see the existing culture and they are kind of onboarded onto that. So that's the game.
Right. Okay. So on this similar topic, you talk about friendships quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading in your book, you were relatively closed growing up. You were not, you didn't realize the value of friendships growing up. That was my perception from reading the book. So what changed, and why has friendships and the idea of friendships become so important for you now?
I mean, I would. So let me just give more context. So I'm the youngest son in a very large family, and so it's like there were always people around, but like the age gap between me and my siblings is quite large. So it's like, in a sense, I felt kind of like the only child in the family, even though like they were all adults and then there's me. I'm like quite a bit younger. And so I read a lot of books growing up, and I loved video games and video game forums and that sort of thing. But when I was a teenager, I kind of, I had my music friends and I did enjoy like that scene. And I had a group of guy friends that I would hang out with almost every day, especially around like my military years. We like every day we would just hang out together. And, I still consider those guys my friends, but we were not good for each other, I would say. It's like, and I'm sure every adult, they can think about like their late teens, early 20s, like when you're still young and you don't have, you don't even know what your values are yet, right? You don't really know what your priorities are. You don't really know who you are, like what you care about. You still don't really know. And so I think there's this sense of like loyalty to the people around you, like whoever is in your crew, you feel like. And the thing is, you may have different values, you may have different motivations, interests, which may not be obvious early on, but as you grow, it's like, oh, you're quite different. And I think people feel very, and it's complicated to navigate. So I don't want to say that, oh, you should just ditch your friends and get lost. It's not so simple, it's not so straightforward, right? It's complex. But I think that when I look back, I so when people always ask things like, oh, what kind of advice would you have for your younger self, or like what kind of what would you do differently, and I have a long list of all the things that I would do differently: fitness, reading, blah blah blah. But the thing that I feel has been missing from that set of seemingly obvious directives was that to seek excellent peers. So nowadays when anybody asks me for good advice, I'm always like, start with seeking excellent peers, because if you have surrounded by 5 or 6 really great people, they will impact you they'll have positive peer pressure on you in every way, right? They'll make you want to be healthier, be more well-read, be more productive, whatever. And when I was 18, 19, 20, I wasn't explicit about seeking excellent peers, and I was probably even like amongst my, so I still love those old friends and they love me, but like, we kind of, we were difficult on each other. We were like, we were kind of mean to each other sometimes, I think, as friends can be, right? Like there's a certain neediness, a bit of cruelty. It's like, yeah, we love each other, we hang out all the time, but also, when one particular friend doesn't seem to appreciate what I'm doing and doesn't seem to behave in a way that I wish my close friends behaved, then there's that friction there, and we don't know how to navigate that friction, and we have not yet developed good communication skills where you understand that, oh, these are my interests and priorities, these are your interests and priorities. We probably shouldn't be like absolute best friends. Like we should be friends still, we should hang out now and then, but we should each also be doing whatever we really really love, whatever we are really passionate about, or whatever. And so I bring this up because I feel that if I could be like a big brother figure to my younger self, I could have saved myself a lot of pain. I could have encouraged myself in a very healthy, productive way. And it's almost, it's easy. If you're not careful, you can feel sad for all the what you didn't do and didn't accomplish because you didn't have the right kind of mentor. But so I try to mentor younger people, and it's so beautiful to witness them develop confidence, develop conviction, understand. And I mean, when I was 23, right? So I was talking about 18, 19, 20. When I was 23, I started the job that I mentioned earlier. And my boss was that figure for me. He was encouraging, he was a mentor, he was really supportive. He was asking me questions like, what are your priorities? What do you want to achieve? Blah, blah, blah. And like, that was so different. And all my colleagues were also with that kind of culture, because that's what the CEO was like. And we all just, when we have lunch every day, we would be, the quality of the conversations would be in that kind of vibe. Like, what have you been up to? It's very supportive and very kind of a growth mindset, right? And my friends did not have that much of a growth mindset starting out. And I would say some of them now, as adults, they've grown in their own ways, in admirable ways. But I think young people, when you're struggling with adolescence, puberty, school, stress, anxiety, it's difficult to be kind of a good friend to other people. You try your best, but there's some stuff that only kind of life experience and good mentorship and stuff can help with.
So I mean, I think growing it's a general observation, and I think it's true with me also. Growing up, it becomes harder and harder to make friends. I think partly it's because when you're in school or college, there's less competitive pressure, less need to be individualistic. But as we are growing, I've found it hard to make friends as I'm growing up. So how do you deal with that, right? I mean, I agree, as you grow, you sort of drift apart from your college and school friends. They become different people. Value systems evolve differently. But then as an adult, really, it's hard to come across that set of peers who understand you, but also push you to become better all the time.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't personally have this problem because I'm who I am, but I help a lot of people with their version of this challenge. And I would say the first thing I would say is you have to make it a priority. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize that you have to be deliberate, meaning like you have to set aside. And I would say people should definitely set aside at least a day a week, like whether it's, a couple of hours every day, or like every Saturday is sacred for socializing, or however you want to think about it. Like, some percentage of your life should be devoted to socializing. And again, when people say the word socializing, you think, oh, it's like going out, having some beers, blah, 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 right? But I mean being kind of thoughtful and mindful about the kind of relationships you want in your life and the kind of social relations that you want. And, earlier we talked about writing and how writing a book is a great way to, or writing blog posts and tweets is a great way to seek resonance with other people. And then you can organize meetups. So there's multiple dimensions at which people fail at this or struggle with this. One is that kind of the most the zeroth problem, right? Or like the problem before the problem is that you have to believe that it's possible. So some people just don't even, it doesn't even occur to them to think. They think, I don't really have any good friends, I'm screwed, life sucks, right? But it should be, I don't really have any good friends. What should I do about it, right? Like, so getting to that point is a big hurdle for some people. And once you get to what should I do about it, it should be like, okay, every week try to set aside a couple of hours to, well, now we're in Corona time, so it's a bit more challenging. But I would say go for dance classes or go for, like, think about what you like in your life. So it shouldn't be forced. It should be something that you already kind of enjoy. And it could be volunteer work maybe, but it doesn't even need to be, kind of like a do-gooder pro-social kind of thing. Although I do recommend it, but like it could be, let me think about some of my friends. One of my friends is doing a parkour school, it's like I don't even remember how he started, but like there's now this whole community of people who meet up like several times a week, and they do it's quite casual. They do this just jumping around like urban environment, like around stairs and stuff. And they're having a very, very good time. And it's it becomes kind of like a church for them, sort of like a secular thing where first they go and do the jumps, and then afterwards they have dinner, they talk about their lives and that kind of thing. And it's open for new people to join. And it's there's things like that, right? You always want to look for some opportunity where you can meet new people. And I mean, so if for whoever is listening to this, and if they feel that I don't really have any friends, I don't really have any whatever, like my recommendation is text all of your existing friends. And you can't really do that in a single day. Like if you go through your Facebook or whatever, check in on your old friends, ask them how they're doing. And maybe if you can find a meme or something to share with them that reminds you of them, or you can say, I saw this movie recently and made me think of you. I saw something. Like everybody kind of has, at least a few dozen people that you know of that you might not be talking to every day. And like just check in on them. And again, this takes time, right? So you have to set aside some time for it. You can do it while you're on the commute, or just when you have a few minutes before bed, whatever. Like just text your friends, ask them how they're doing. And like maybe like 80% of them will be like, oh yeah, cool, thanks, like I'm fine. But then like 10% of them might be like, oh, it's great to hear from you, and then you end up talking all night. You never know, it can happen. And like you have to, it's like you miss all the shots you don't take, right? So always be taking shots, trying to talk to people. And I think, like what you were mentioning earlier about like as adults, people worry that you're gonna be like selling them something or asking for a job interview, or just kind of being very like there's a certain neediness that people sometimes bring to the table. So I think it helps to kind of convey, just be like, oh, I got some time to kill, I'll check in on my friends.
I think it's hard making friends as adults, because in school you're just in the shared context. When you're young, true. It's effortless. But as adults you have to take an extra effort, and that doesn't occur naturally. I mean, this idea that making friends is an investment of time, I think it's not a naturally occurring idea. This is non-trivial insight. But I've seen people who feel who don't feel they're missing out if they don't have any great friends. But what's your take on that? I mean, I see that you put quite a bit of importance, and I understand we are a social animal. But how? I mean, I'm curious in the sense of, because you talk about friendship so much, how it has specifically helped you, personally, where other people might not be realizing what they're missing out if they don't have a good set of friends.
Right. So my work colleagues, who I consider my friends to this day, and it became clearer after I left my job that we still keep in touch, and we still they really helped me just imagine myself in a different way. Like, so when I was like in my late teens, I used to think of myself as a bit of a delinquent, like a bit of a, like, I'm just kind of smart, but sort of, I was like hanging out with musicians, smoking cigarettes, getting drunk. Like that was kind of my mental model of myself. And, my parents would be like, oh, why can't you study more? Why can't you work harder? And I'm like, and so my this new group of friends I had from work, they gave me a context in which I could imagine myself working hard, feeling rewarded for the work that I do. I wanted to live up to their expectation. I wanted to succeed for them as much as for myself, and so that felt very nourishing and wholesome. Like it didn't feel selfish. It didn't feel, yeah. So that was one thing. The other thing was, so after I left my job and I was tweeting a lot, in 2019, I believe. My friends in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, they invited me to visit them, and they offered to pay for my flight, which at the time
Wow.
I was mind blown. Yeah, and so they flew me over from Singapore to the US, and that I described that event as like apart from my wedding, it's kind of like the most life changing, pivotal experience. First of all, to get on a plane that goes across the planet. And so I've never left like kind of Southeast Asia. I visited India, like this kind of that South and Southeast Asia was most of my life. And so that was the first time I was visiting the other side of the planet, and my friends were paying for it. And when I went there, I had all these Twitter friends that would bring me out to lunch, walk around with me, show me around, invite me to their homes. And it just felt so nourishing. And I felt at home everywhere, and it's crazy because if you go to San Francisco, you see the homeless people on the streets.
Yeah.
And so it's like the juxtaposition of, I felt like I have homes everywhere. Like everywhere I can go, I have friends who take care of me and want welcome me into their homes. And there are people who are struggling with the most basic things at the same time. It's like really it's like a tale of two cities, right? Best of times, worst of times. And I just felt so loved. I felt so welcome and wanted. And that made me want to share that, like what I learned from that, or what that experience was. I felt like, it's not right for me to be the only person, or, in my world, right? Like if I get this kind of gift from the world, I have to share with other people. And so that's why I write books, everything. And, but I would say, so the thing that these friends have done for me is that they really just, they lift me up where I can't lift myself up, so like it's almost part of it. I think is like there's the, I have a few different threads on it. One of the things is I think school and capitalism, if you want to go that far, but like just, or civilization up until now, right? So school so far, it trains us to think of ourselves as atomized individuals. We compete on standardized tests, and everyone around us is a competitor that we, is like even if you're friends, right? Like if who scores better is a bell curve, and you shouldn't copy from the next person. That sort of thing. Like all of those things, they train us in a bad way, I think, because they make us suspicious of each other. They make us uncomfortable with other people's success and so on. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can collaborate. Your success can help me become more successful and vice versa. And I think good friends, they really help you see that, and they help you unlearn all that kind of conditioning where, it's you seeing some people succeed makes you feel like you can succeed too, and they can help you, you can help them. And in a very straightforward way, like on Twitter, for example, like a group of friends, when any one person kind of their audience grows, the people that they talk to also get like the spillover benefits from in audience growth, right? And I'm not even talking about like just emotional benefits, psychological benefits. But yeah, I would say that it's just so night and day for me. Like even, and I can now, if I wanted to, let's say I can spend a year saying, oh, I need to work on this next book, and so I'm not going to hang out, I'm not going to talk to people, I'm going to kind of go into my cave. I can trust that at the end of that, there will be people who are waiting for me, who want to hear from me then, and all of those things. And it's just nice to know that there's a light on somewhere, that you can, be fed, you can be taken care of, like not like just psychologically. And I found that made me less anxious, less needy, less, I don't have as much to prove to people. And I don't feel as scared. Like it's just psychologically, it feels healthier. It feels better in the body. Because I remember when I was about around 2015 or so, I was depressed and I was struggling with, oh my God, is this all life is? Like go to work every day, even with my colleagues who were great, right? And my wife, who I love very much. It just felt like, is this it? Like, am I just going to go to work every day for the next 50 years? And like, is that it? And I remember being depressed. And I think part of that was, I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to. Like, so, and I had my old friends, but I married very young. So I all my old friends were still in university, and we no longer related to each other. And so it felt like a lot like I was in a box in my own life, right? And now it feels like I have connections with other people, and at any point in time, if I wanted to, I could reach out to any of my friends and have them support me, which is great. So yeah, that's what I got
So
out.
have you specifically nurtured these friendships, or they've blossomed as an outcome of your writing and tweeting? I mean, how intentional is making these friendships bloom? I know you said setting up some time apart for
Yeah.
socializing, but to me, I mean, looking at your Twitter feed, it feels like it's a very natural outcome of who you are and the thoughts you're expressing, and not very precise engineering of certain relationships.
I mean, I would say that I have, at this point, it's second nature for me, but it wasn't always. So I had to kind of train myself and think of like, so when I was like 16, I was a very disagreeable asshole, basically. But I mean, I would say, with a heart of gold, if you ask me, I would say that I was disagreeable, but I meant well. But for like so my close friends, no, but like acquaintances and stuff, like if we get into an argument, I kind of keep pushing, because to me that's like my love language, right? If someone kept pushing at me, I appreciate that they care about whatever we're talking about so much that they want to keep going. But I found that most people are not like that. Most people, if you challenge them too hard, too long, they feel threatened or attacked, and then they don't feel comfortable. And so that definitely kind of was a bottleneck on like my social relations. There's a great line in I don't know if you've watched Randy Pausch. He was a teacher at Carnegie Mellon University, and he gave a lecture called The Last Lecture, where he had like some terminal, I think pancreatic cancer, some cancer he had.
Yeah.
And he gave this last lecture, and in that lecture, he talks about his mentor, right? And so at this point, Randy is like this delightful, very well-developed, very nurturing, great speaker, great husband, great teacher. Everyone loves him. And he was talking about how when he was younger, he was arrogant. He was kind of, and his mentor said to him, Randy, it's unfortunate that people perceive you as arrogant, because that's going to limit the amount of good that you do in the world. And so, I saw Randy give that insight in a lecture, and I'm like, oh my God, that's me. That's my life. I used to feel like, I got to show off how smart I am. I got to show off how, I got to win arguments and all those things. And yeah, that limited the positive effect that I could have on people, and it limited kind of how people saw me. And yeah, I reflected on that. I journaled a lot about it. I would say that my journaling practice throughout my teens and 20s. So I have like I have a blog that I don't publicize very much, but it's like just a lot of writing, like, and I was feeling this today. I wonder why this happened, blah, blah, blah. And I did lots and lots of introspective journaling. And I think that practice helped me see what my priorities are, helped me see, so it's like, you do I think everybody just interacts with other people all the time casually, just not very thoughtfully, not very intentionally. And I would say being like 5% to 10% more intentional in your interactions with people naturally makes them like you more, because people are so used to dealing with other people who are kind of like, even just being friendlier to the person who you buy tea from, right? Or just the convenience store people around you in your life. Like I do believe that if you try to be 5%, 10% more thoughtful and kind of listen more, just do that inner work, people are drawn to you. They want to repay the favor in some. They might not realize it consciously, but they just feel that, I like being around this person. Like I feel I like who I am around this person, and that is, that's real wealth. If you think about what wealth is, I would say wealth is options, right? So if you have a lot of money but you can't leave a job, you can't spend it, then you don't really have wealth. You just have a whatever. And having people in your life who care about you, and having people who want to do you favors and stuff like that, like that's real wealth. And it's you can't tax that wealth. I like to joke, like you can't tax friendship. And you can share it with more people. You can introduce people to each other. I do think I'm probably kind of a little bit pathological about this. Like I'm quite obsessed about the possibility in the human social graph domain. But I think everybody can benefit from a little bit of insight in just evaluating their own social graphs, and even just your own family, your own friends. Like you can just, like, I think people who think that they need more money, or people who think that they need more something, like if they were actually just 5% kinder in their social interactions with their family and friends, and then they receive the kind of reciprocity of that, I think they would feel wealthier, right? They would feel the sense of belonging and love. And that's and you don't need to do a lot more for that. It's very, very small changes that can go along.
So I think you're right. It's more of an attitude change than a strategy. I've seen it in myself. I think my 20s, I was all about winning brownie points, winning arguments. And that shallows out very soon. I think after a period of time, I realized, is this it? What if I scored a point over someone else? And it stops giving joy. But gradually, I feel now, I'm not just automatically, but intentionally, I'm shifting my stance towards how can I be like a positive contributor to the world and the people around me. And it feels great. It doesn't feel like competition. I think competition just sucks the joy out of so many things. And when we are naturally competing in so many domains, why pick up battles everywhere? Why can't you be just a nourishing presence?
I think that helps a lot with this is to take a longer view. And think about like how let's say you have two sports teams who are in a rivalry, right? And then for your opponents, you want to win in the matches with each other. But like then you take these two teams and like you imagine these, let's say, football players, right, or cricket players or whatever, and like at the end of their lives, when let's say they've retired and they're 80 years old, they would look at each other and they would see a friend. Even though you are on opposing sides of the teams, you realize that you have more in common than not. And like you're no longer, you've like, you may have your rivalry in the past or whatever. And so what I try to do is and I wouldn't say I'm perfect at this, right? It's something that I have to work at. But like thinking in advance that on a sufficiently long view, right? Eventually everyone that you competed with, you will think fondly of, sort of. Like for me, I think for me that's true. Like, so even when I used to work in my previous company, I would keep tabs on the people who are in the same role as me, but in our competitors. And so now I've left that company like for years now. And I still kind of know who those people are. And if I ever met them, we would have such fun talking, right? Like, hey, remember when you used to do that? I was on this side of the field, right? And what did you do? What did I do? What are you doing now? And I think having that kind of long view, it relieves a lot of stress and anxiety of needing to win any small. And so it's like I'm not encouraging people to be like kind of release yourself from having any competitive feelings or whatever. Like it's fine to be competitive. I think competition is part of what makes life exciting and fun. But like just have a little bit of time to think about the long view and the big picture. And I think that is a way of clarifying. I think Ray Bradbury said, at the end of a long life, you realize that love was the answer to everything. And I think that's true. I think if you read a lot of not even a lot, just read a bunch of people who you respect and admire from like history, who at the end of their lives, like Bertrand Russell has this great thing about the things that he loved in his life. And he said, I can't remember I don't know if I can remember this perfectly, but he said, falling in love, that's one thing. The pleasure of kind of figuring stuff out intellectually. And he said something about caring about injustice and cruelty and trying to make a difference to that. And I think that's about it. Like 3 or 4 things. He said that those were the things that, looking back on his life, like those are the things that really, really mattered. And same for, you can look up, there's like this, you can search like the 5 regrets of people on their deathbeds. The number 1 regret is I wish I had the courage to live a life that was true to myself. That means like, just in line with my own values, my own beliefs, instead of trying to impress my colleagues or trying to impress, my mom, or trying to impress, like just impress yourself, earn your own respect and your own admiration. And I again, like some people might hear these things and think, that sounds so virtue signaling or whatever. Like it can be. But like at the end of the day, you have to face yourself, right? Like when the lights are off, when you're in bed alone, or even if your spouse is next to you, you're still ultimately, it's you versus yourself, or you versus your maker, and like you have to come to terms with yourself, and you live in your own head, right? And so it's funny. So my second book that I'm working on is called Introspect, and one of the themes is, it's sort of like you have to become friends with yourself. It's like internally inside your head there are competing desires, competing interests, and a person who's internally conflicted, like it will reflect out of them, and like they can't be fully present with other people. And so it's like this fractal thing, which is like as above, so below kind of thing, like as outside, so inside. And another quote that I like is, if you're going hiking, a pebble in your shoe hurts and sucks way more than the road being rocky, right? So it's always whatever's inside the house is what causes the bulk of the pain. And yeah, so you have to, before you even, simultaneously, right? I'm not going to say you have to make yourself perfect before you can make friends, right? We are all imperfect, but like this endeavor of trying to be a good friend and being a good social being is also applies inwards, right? Like writing down your own internal conflicts and listening to yourself, and not beating yourself up for having desires or having, I talk to a lot of especially young guys, and they're very, very internally like, shouldn't I want to make the world a better place? Shouldn't I do well in school? I'm like, no, why do you think that? And I don't even tell them what to think. I just ask them like what's going on. Yeah. And I can see the relief in their face, and sometimes confusion at first, but I can see them kind of release the tension, as like they may have never even sat down to think about what they want, because they feel that they have to live up to their parents' expectations and society, and be a good person. I'm like, okay, I agree. I all of that is correct, but I'm curious to know what you think, what your feelings are, And yeah, once they release that tension, they lighten up, and then their friends will tell them like, oh, I had such a nice time hanging out with you, and it just keeps spreading.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's where I feel, say, some of the thumb rules, such as, not really filtering what you want to say, or I mean, when people say, being authentic, it just means being really transparent, from your core to your outwards. I mean, yeah. I've personally sort of adhered to that, wherein I really don't filter out what I write, what I tweet, because I feel that even an iota bit of cognitive dissonance that builds up when you feel some way, but you feel like it's inappropriate, it just starts up building and piling up on, and over the years it just makes your personality so confused that you don't even recognize you anymore.
Any gains that you get by putting on an act, you can't respect yourself, right? And I think you can see some celebrities, I'm not going to name names, but like you can see some celebrities who are not happy because that they've achieved their like money and fame and whatever by putting on an act, and they can't respect themselves for putting on an act, and they can't respect their audience even. And it's so lonely, right? Like you have all this money and fame and status, but it feels fake. It's all right. Part of the act. Whereas like whatever pain you receive early on for saying what you think and being honest, like it sucks at first, like as you get some pushback, and then you might get legitimate criticism of your beliefs. So you say what you really believe, and someone tells you, oh, that's wrong, blah blah blah, and then you're like, ouch, that hurts. But then you think about it like, okay, why did that person react that way? Maybe I hadn't considered something. And so now you correct your genuine beliefs. You realize that, oh, my beliefs were, they were correct for what I knew to be true, but there's some other things that I had not considered. And then you become more nuanced, and it's honest and truthful. And then anybody you make friends with along the way that way, or any business dealings that you start with your partners, everybody who comes along into your life and all the projects you do and everything, it's built on that honest, genuine foundation. And then you can just relax. It's like everything you do is compounds in a good way.
Yeah. This reminds me of the book Finite and Infinite Games.
Yes.
Where James Carr talks about finite games are those where you play to win. I mean, there's exactly like you are playing to really be good to society, good to parents, adhere to expectations. But the more joyful game is the infinite game, where it just keeps on going. And I feel authenticity is perhaps the best infinite game you can play, because you're truly not, I mean, like you said, it's not about being perfect, but it's about being true to who you are at this moment. Wherein at every moment in your life, you're not reflecting back and saying that I knew I should have done something else, but I didn't.
Yeah. I think an interesting thing about self-discovery and actualization is that you don't entirely know who you are at any point in time. Like, the domain of self is so vast, and your self-concept is a kind of work in progress, and you're figuring it out. And so part of the exciting thing about getting older, getting experience and all those things is you find out who you are. And so you get more and more conviction. I think, and a thing I like to talk about is that sometimes people hear the advice that's like, "Oh, be yourself," and they're like, "How do I?" And I think what here's a fun way of kind of doing a bit of math on it, which is that I think what people are saying when they say "be yourself" is it's a double negative. They're saying, "Be not yourself," right? So don't put on an act. Don't try to think about what people want to see and then try to give them what you think they want to see, right? Don't put on an act. Don't put on a performance. And the reason for that is it's like, you can use like geeky terminology here. It's like there's a lag that happens when you try to simulate what you think the other person wants. Like there's a noise that gets, because you're never going to perfectly know what people want, and you're never going to perfectly be able to perform what you think people want. So it's like there's multiple layers of like, it's like this the telephone game, right? Like the signal gets degraded, and it's just you look stiff, or you're talking too fast, or you're just, again, it's not which isn't to say that talking fast is bad, but it's like when you're forcing yourself to be a certain way, it becomes very stiff. It becomes very narrow and forced. Whereas if you kind of relax, if you kind of and it's not, and I get it, it's not always easy to relax if you're nervous and one of those things. But what usually helps is to announce. You can tell them, "Hi, I'm really nervous to meet you." They'll be like, "Oh, okay," as opposed to pretending you're confident when you're actually secretly nervous. Like. And maybe some people, when you tell them you're nervous, they're like, "Oh, like I don't trust this person who's." But like, I think most of the time, if you share, again, the reward, there might be like a 10%, 20% chance of outcome that you weren't hoping for. But whenever people appreciate your honesty, it's like, it's so great. And then like the returns on that compound for the rest of your life is amazing.
The irony of pretending to be someone else is, I feel people see through it. Sometimes I feel in social situations, everyone knows that the other one is not being an authentic person. And there is this palpable nervousness in the whole situation because everyone is slightly different than what the other knows the person is, especially I think in a lot of family situations, especially in Southeast Asian or at least Indian context, that happens where there's a lot of show off, a lot of exaggeration, a lot of things which are not true, and everyone knows it's like a show that's been put on. And I find that really funny because everyone knows that, yet nobody can just say, let's just be authentic. We all are pretending, so why put extra energy in that?
I was just watching Fresh Off the Boat recently, which is a show about Asia, like Chinese, I think Taiwanese immigrants to the US. And it's similar. It's interesting. The people in Africa, South America, immigrants in the US, Southeast Asia, South Asia. There's a lot to get into there. I suspect some of it comes from, I honestly think it's like a generational trauma, like it might be as far back as colonialism or, just war, famine, like scarcity mindset, basically, right? So people feel that there isn't enough to go around, and you have to do whatever it takes to impress people, because if you it's like if you don't get those social points, you're gonna be cast out I guess the scarcity mindset makes you think that like poverty is around the corner, or just difficulty is around the corner. It always seems weird to say it out loud, but it makes sense when you examine the behavior through it. And nobody talks about their fears, right? So I have this tweet, something like Asian parents don't tell you they love you, they show you by feeding you and giving you things. And the opposite of that is they don't tell you they're scared, they show you by controlling your life, right? Or by kind of just guilt tripping you, shaming you. And it's very often, it's like sometimes there's this thing where maybe your parents might say, "Oh, I don't mind that you don't want to be an engineer or whatever. I'm fine. But what will uncle say? What will auntie say?" And then it's like I want to protect you from their judgment, right? And so if everyone in your society all kind of seem to be playing that game, even if the people around you in the immediate circle seem somewhat enlightened or self-aware, like if everyone else seems to be playing that game, it does make sense that you feel that there's a cost that is just difficult to surmount. And I do have a lot of sympathy for that. So again, in my second book, I'm writing about like just how to deal with like scarcity mindset, all of those things. And I definitely feel it's very different for people who are in Asia or people whose parents are from immigrant cultures compared to, if you're like well off and in a culture where like there's a lot of freedom and a lot of self-expression and so on. Like it's very different. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So Visa, coming back to the topic of friendliness, you write about friendship and ambition. So I mean, from a distance, these two seem polar opposites. Can you be friendly? Can you be friendly to other people and yet be ambitious? What does that really mean?
Yeah. And so, the way in which a lot of my conflicting ideas work is that you have to operate on a long time scale. So again, it's like if you want to grow really, really fast, then you don't have time to do, to hang out in the water cooler and chat with all your colleagues, right? Like everyone get to work now and do as much as possible. But if you're willing to allow your ambitions to take decades to play out, then you have space to kind of grow. I mean, so again, and my definition of ambition is I'm trying to be quite clear about this. There is a mainstream definition of ambition that is it's all about prestige and accolades and wanting to climb the ladder and get all these success trinkets and honors. And I try to be clear that my definition of ambition is not that, right? Like my definition of ambition is if you go into the root of the word, historically it's the same root as like ambulance, ambulate. It's like walking around. Like so in like the Latin context, ambition was political, where you get to go around and ask for votes. That's what ambitious people did, like to become like a counselor or senator or whatever. And I think of ambition now as I think the most ambitious thing you can do in 2021 and moving forward is to know what your values are and to try to express those values allow those values to express themselves at the largest possible, I don't know if large is the right word, but like just to allow your values and your taste and your insight to express itself outwards successively. And very often, the limiting factor for intelligent people is, if you're just kind of not, if you don't have any ideas and insights and whatever, like that's fine. It's okay to be a relaxed, like I sometimes have to clarify this for some people. Like it's okay to not be ambitious. In fact, I almost say that
it's okay to chase butterflies.
Yeah. If you're satisfied chasing butterflies, I'm almost jealous of you. Like I'm happy that you're happy. If you can be happy just living your life and being a good father, a good husband, that's wonderful. That's so you can have a very meaningful and fulfilling life, kind of just living the simple life, right? It can be great. But like I'm writing for people who are like bitten by the curiosity bug and like, what's the greatest thing we can do, right? We live in the most exciting time in human history, right? Tens of thousands of years now, we have all this technology, we have all this opportunity. Like, what can we do that has not been done before? And the limiting factor for these people, I find, is like if you have this insight, this understanding, people aren't really limited. They're limited by like their social regulations, their internalized social regulations about like. So a thing that I didn't understand until quite recently was, is it true that people are afraid of success? And if it's true, why? Like it seems like, why would you be afraid of success? Like, like it seems almost like a joke. Like people are scared of failure, obviously, because failure is painful. But why would you be afraid of success? And I've come to realize and believe that it's true that people are afraid of success because they associate, because you see how we bully and insult and attack successful people, right? Yeah. And make fun of them. And you know that if you are the only friend in your friend group who gets promoted and makes more money, you know that they're going to talk behind your back and they're going to insult you and make fun of you. And people just don't want to, if you get promoted, you can no longer kind of joke with your colleagues about, not now you're their boss, let's say, right? It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, it's unpleasant. And if you want to be genuinely ambitious and do great things, you have to have a plan for how am I going to navigate the social pain. It will be painful. And again, it's like, if someone really wealthy and successful sat down and said, let me tell you about how painful it is to be successful, everyone's gonna be like, get out of here, which is part of the problem, right? Because nobody wants to listen to a successful person whine and complain about the pains of being successful, which is part of why it's so isolated and isolating and uncomfortable. It's psychological extreme sport, I think. Like, and just people don't want to. So what people do is funny. They will profess that they want to be successful, right? They will say that, oh, I would like to be successful. No, they don't. Like it's for social posturing. So everyone wants everyone else to be above average. Everyone wants everyone else to be like moderately. Like, we hope that you get a promotion next year, like in a stable and predictable way for the rest of your life, right? That's what most people want. It's almost like a sitcom. And the way I see it, it's and again, like probably for 95% of people, that's totally fine. But I'm curious to find the rest of us who just want to make the future happen, right? Like, just kind of really, I feel a sense of kinship when I read, people from like Ralph Waldo Emerson, people from hundreds of years ago who were, Da Vinci. I mean, I'm not saying that I am as smart as Da Vinci, but like when I read his journals and whatnot, he's like, oh, what will the future be like? It's like there's this tradition of people who have moved the species forward, and we have the opportunity to contribute to that. Not saying that we are at the absolute tip of the spear, but we can contribute to that endeavor, and it's just, to me, it's really exciting. And
So,
go ahead.
So ambition for you is, I don't want to say not give a fuck about what people are thinking, but you obviously care about feedback, but you don't sort of limit your potential by the fear of how you'll be judged.
Yeah, you have to have a vision, I guess, and you have to choose who you want to be judged by. So you have to choose. So I would say, have like a council, whether it's in your head or like a literal physics, like have about 20 people, roughly, I would say 20 to 30 people. Ideally, they are diverse. Ideally, they're from around the world, different countries, different political backgrounds, different gender, just different personalities, different interests, some people in business, some people in politics, whatever, just different perspectives that you respect and admire. And then you kind of judge yourself by like a report card of how they talk about you and how they like seek out these different mentors. And so it's tricky if all of your mentors are from this, or all of the people that you want to be measured by, if they're all from the same industry, for example, and they all kind of want the same thing. And so then you are at risk of potentially making you think you're doing the right thing, but the whole industry or the whole community was sort of misled by a charismatic sociopath, something. I don't know what's the specifics, but I find that having a diversity of people that you respect and admire, and then getting their feedback, so like my wife she's not ambitious in the way that I am. She has her own interests. She cares about, our local social environment and politics. And she's kind of got like a investigative journalist sort of mindset and worldview. Like she wants to know what's going on, but she's not like an activist, and she's not like a visionary sort of soapbox. Like I have a YouTube channel. I like to talk to people. Like, she doesn't really like to talk to people. And it's good that we're different, because I can trust her judgment on certain things and not worry that she is saying something to appease me, And so, but again, like, she's my wife, so there are things that she might not see that someone, a childhood friend might point out, and someone that I just met whose blog I really like, who I trust has a good perspective on things. So it's good to have like a couple of dozen people who have if you do something and like universally the public is disgusted by it, and they are like, you have a horrible response, then probably you did something terrible. But I think more often than not, it's like you want to, if it's like, I'm trying to think now of like, what's an example of something I might do that might be questionable. I think, so I'm trying to build a brand sort of, or like build a following or YouTube channel or whatever. And I'm very mindful of the fact that there are ways in which that can go wrong, right? And some of my friends that I respect and admire, and I keep them around and I regularly revisit talking to them, especially because they see things differently. Some people feel that simply trying to do that, trying to grow a following and, position yourself as someone who has something meaningful to say, like the extreme view on that, I don't know how extreme I say it. Some people feel that simply doing that is like it sets you up for failure. Like it's bad because if you do it, you will attract followers who don't want to think and they just want to do whatever their guru says, right? And I'm aware of that dynamic, that dynamic exists. I'm aware of it, and I want to do my best to not let that happen. And I think that if you grow really, really large, like some small percentage of people are going to be obsessed about you no matter what. And thankfully, for now, that still seems like far off, so I'm not too worried about it. But I do have some friends who like me as a person and like me as a friend, who their worldview is different than mine in that way. And so it's important to me that I regularly have conversations with them and tell them what I'm doing and show them and ask for their input. And yeah, that helps a lot with avoiding. That gives me like a very high quality criticism, right? Like it's thoughtful and kind. They're like, oh, I see what you're trying to do. And they might joke. They'll be like, oh, are you trying to, build your following again? Haha, they'll make fun of me a little bit. But they have that shared context with me. We've been talking about this for years. And so because I know I have a trustworthy kind of a friend that I trust that has a dissenting opinion. Now, when some random guy with anonymous face, some weird Twitter handle that I don't recognize, and they come along and just start insulting me, I can completely ignore that because I'm like, I used before I had these friends, I used to be like, oh, if someone insults me, what if they're right? I used to agonize about that. Like, what if I used to feel like I should reply to everybody, I should never block anyone, I should never censor anything. And yeah, so it can drive you crazy, I think, if you try to listen to every single bit of feedback. And so you have to, in a way, you have to design your some people call it an echo chamber, but like you can design the way you receive information, and then you can specifically design a separate thing that accounts for the weaknesses of that apparatus. And like,
right.
Whereas simply immersing yourself in the total chaos of noise, that's not a very good design of receiving, or not a good way of receiving information. Like you'll go mad. Yeah. And so that's the challenge. And I think when you design that very carefully and thoughtfully, and again, you invite people to criticize the design of it, you tell people what you think your biases are, you ask them what they think your biases are and stuff like that. When you do that, it becomes a lot easier to deal with haters or critics or hecklers and just noise. And so it becomes then you develop confidence from knowledge and experience, right? So I think there's some people think that confidence only means like bravado and bluster, like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. There's that bluster that should be avoided, but there's confidence also, like the way a musician is confident or a painter is confident because they know their stuff. They've practiced a lot and they've seen it from many angles. So they can show up and they can improvise, and that kind of confidence I think is healthy to have, and it lets you navigate. Yeah,
I think it's about paying attention to details and to nuance where you're able to appreciate the depth of feedback that you're getting rather than, hey, this is great or this is bullshit.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that convinced me to don't pay attention to these low signal comments. So sometimes I've been called, right winger or left winger,
right?
Sometimes on the same tweet. And this just convinces that, I'll drive myself crazy if I start attaching myself to the labels people give to me without putting even an iota of concern for how would I feel or whether that's even helpful.
Yeah, I think one thing that has worked for me was so I'm always curious to understand things and to know things well. So when people come at me with again, it's not everyone, it's like pretty rare, but like if I get kind of a belligerent, angry kind of response. I sometimes, if I feel like it, I will ask one question, like any question. I just ask them to elaborate on what they're saying, or why do you think that way, or why do you feel that way. And I would say, maybe 20% of the time. So someone who starts out angry, if you give them the opportunity to elaborate, some of them are so surprised that you're actually willing to hear them, that they might actually then, oh, yeah, I was being very rude, but since you asked, here's my thoughts. Sometimes that's interesting. Sometimes it's not going to go well no matter what. But when you ask them to elaborate and they elaborate in worse and worse ways, it becomes clear, oh, I'm dealing with someone who's just really not interested in having a conversation. And I found that by doing that several times, over time, I just developed a sensitivity for, is this person, serious about having a conversation, or are they not? And I think, so that's kind of the barometer, sort of like, is this person serious about having a conversation, or are they not? And like, I no longer have any time to talk to people who are not serious, in a sense.
Right. So Visa, since we're coming at the end of our sort of slotted time, but I'm really enjoying it, I did want to get into one very broad sort of topic on taste. I think you write about taste. So what is taste specifically? What is good taste? And I was curious about one. I'm not sure if you've explored it or not, but I found that outside my comfort zone, it's hard to identify good tasteful things. So do you sort of relate to that? Because we all can identify in a very narrow zone that, hey, this is good, this is bad. But the world is so large. How do you go about identifying something that's really good, which you're not familiar with?
Yeah, I think that so taste is something that you can get very, very nuanced about. But I would say that there's a very it's a big topic, and I haven't yet found sort of like my favorite way of talking about it. I haven't condensed it to a juicy talking point. But I would say that taste is about feelings. It's about a sense of how something moves you. And so I would say that I have good taste in text, in books, in movies. I have decent taste. Music, I have pretty decent taste. I'm trying to think of something that I don't have taste in. Something maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say because the things that you think about are things that you think about. So it's hard to think about it's hard to think about what you don't think about. But I do think that there is something like if you get very good at cultivating taste in one domain, it doesn't automatically translate, but it can translate. So one of the things I talk about is like,
let me rephrase. I mean, where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I mean, usually, the first reaction to seeing something really strange, which is outside your comfort zone, I think there can be multiple reactions. Right. One is of being repulsive and really thinking, what weird thing is it? For example, in India, I think the graffiti culture is not that prevalent. But if you go to, say, Europe, you'll see a lot of graffiti. Now you can have different reactions to it. Some people may have a reaction of, hey, this is really weird, this is vandalism, and so on and so forth. The others would, even if they've never seen graffiti, they may feel very attracted to it. They would feel this is something tasteful. So have you, as you explore more and more, since you're curious, have you found yourself gravitating towards giving the benefit of the doubt that probably this isn't good?
Yeah.
And how do you identify that? Are there any cues that you can figure out?
Yeah. Are you familiar with like the ocean framework for like, there's neuroticism, conscientiousness, openness, the big five. Yeah. So I think that I am very, so I'm very open. I'm not neurotic at all. I'm moderately conscientious. I'm very agreeable. So it's like I'm the kind of person that, I'm very cool with novelty, unfamiliarity, things that are dissonant, confusing, overwhelming, like things that some people might find kind of disgusting or just overwhelming or gross. Like, I'm not saying that I don't have a disgust response, but like it's been so I grew up. So I'm born and raised in Singapore, and it's very diverse, many different religions, different food, different everything. So I've always been exposed to a lot of different things. And then when I came online, it's like there's so many different subcultures in music and stuff like that. So it's always been a value to me that even if I don't instinctively like something, if something recoils, so like I don't really like Korean food. Like I just don't. But I am absolutely certain that Korean food is like any other cuisine. It can be elevated to an incredible art form, right? I'm sure that there's like amazing. Maybe I just haven't had good Korean food yet, right? Like maybe I've only tried like the kind of outlet stuff that's not very, like I haven't had a good chef, right? And but yeah, even without having tried good stuff yet, I'm absolutely certain that there must be very, very good Korean food. I would never write off a whole culture by, oh, that culture does not do well. It doesn't make sense to me that any domain where people can practice and iterate wouldn't reach high levels of refinement. It's just that appreciating the good stuff is something that may take skill and may take experience and domain knowledge. And if you don't have that domain knowledge, you may not get it. I think that's especially true for like certain kinds of, let's say, rap music, right? Like if you just don't like rap music, like some of it I've heard, I wouldn't say I love rap music. I'm not a fan, but I have friends who are big fans, and once in a while I'm like, hey, send me some recommendations. And then they're like, oh, you should listen to this artist, their word flow and their style and their choices. It's like the highest level. And I'm like, cool. I respect that amount of love went into the craft. But when I listen to it, I cannot appreciate all the things that my friend appreciates because they have all the context.
That's a good attitude to have of respect. I feel a lot of people fall into the trap of hating something and that becomes cool in itself, right? Being dismissive. And I feel that's very self-limiting on a meta level. Because
it's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap, right? Exactly. And I feel it would sort of close you off for so many unexpected experiences if your reaction is to find validation by hating something. And
it's really, really bad because especially if, let's say, you post on Twitter or anywhere else, like you can be articulate and skillful and even a bit funny and all those things in being a hater and dismissing something as bad. But then the curse is you will attract people like that to you. And then now you're surrounded by people who just enjoy shitting on other things. And once that becomes a social reality, it becomes very, very difficult to ever attempt anything, right? Because anything you want to start trying, when you first start, it's gonna suck. And because you insult things for sucking so much, you'll be afraid to try anything that's gonna fail, right? You'll be afraid to learn a new song or learn music or learn drawing, anything you want to try. Your own brain will be like, oh, but that sucks though, because you have to make, to cultivate taste, you have to make mistakes, you have to make things badly, and it's cheap and easy to get kind of validation for insulting things, but it's a horrible dead end. Like it's just.
Have you seen anyone change in their highest meta level attitude of negativity to having a lot of positivity? Have you seen people transform, or is it like just a very core part of personality?
That's interesting. I think I know of a couple of people personally who have shifted. Okay. But the thing is, but it's interesting what you asked, because you say, is it a core personality thing? And it's like, I think that they had, so it's like a the Native American proverb, right? You have two wolves inside you, right? So they had both wolves all along. And it's like, there was always some part of them that, if you ask me about the people that I'm thinking about, a couple of friends, there was always some part of them that loved, just wonderful, beautiful things. And then in their teenage years or early 20s, they got hardened by just being in a harsh social environment. But that was learned. It wasn't natural to them. They learned to be a dick and learned to be cruel and all those things. And then eventually there's some kind of a crisis moment or something bad happens usually. I think it's likelier that people's transformations are usually crisis related. Like there's always some kind of moment of reckoning in some way, like breakup, parent passes away, something dramatic that makes them reevaluate everything. And then they they walk away from this lattice structure of whatever was their identity here. So I do have a lot of friends who I would say they left something that was their identity and started over from scratch. And these are some of my favorite people, ex-lawyers, ex-Mormons, like there's people who, people who used to be religious and now they're not, people who used to be there's people who walked away from something. Okay. Like I even have a couple of friends who were raised in like very like cultish kind of religious environments, and then they left that and they talk about their previous experiences. But then what you asked was like, is it a core personality change? I think they were never fully comfortable in like they were always kind of like they were putting on an act and then they threw off the act, right? So it's not like they were fundamentally mean and cruel and then they chose to change who they were fundamentally. But I'm putting words into, that's my interpretation of their experience. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them said, I fundamentally changed who I was as a person. I think that some people might say that they've been through that. I do think that what you're getting at though is that it's not common. It's definitely not common. It's like these people are all like they are remarkable people. Like anybody who goes through like a dramatic personal transformation, it's like, to me, they are like almost like a magician or like a a shaman, something. They to shake off any one social context, right? It's a kind of suicide almost. It's a kind of death, like you've really a renewal. The hero's journey, right? You go into the belly of the whale and you come out and you become a different person. And there's so many movies and stuff. Every superhero movie is about this in some way, and everyone watches the movies and they like it. But like to actually go through a personal transformation like that, I respect it so much. So I seek out people who have been like that, and so I surround myself with them. But most people realistically will never do anything like that. I think most people kind of just try to be a little bit better, a little bit nicer, like that. And that's fine. We can't expect every person to be a dramatic kind of heroic great man kind of actor. But these few people, I think they're a ray of hope that you could change yourself if you really want to. Because so many of us feel trapped in the circumstances we are born in the mindset we have, the personality we have, and we wish we could be a better version of ourselves. And I think it's amazing. I really love this mega theme of trying to keep tinkering on yourself, who you are as a person. I think that is the life's mission. That is the point of life, to really figure out. So Visa, I know I can go on and on and on. I'm really enjoying having conversation with you, but I guess we can halt here and probably catch up another time. I would love to hang out with you more often and really enjoyed this today. Thank you so much for having me. It's fun.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. So let's catch up again sometime. Take care.
Sure. Cheers.
Bye. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.